her. I'll stop sharing so that she is able to share her content and let you know what's next. All right.
Well, hello. Thank you so much, Kim and Donna. And thank you to all of you who are here today. I was reading through how you're feeling, and I want to just hug all of you. I can't even imagine the year that you've had, and then the fact that you are here after school hours, still learning, still doing what's best for your kids is such a testament to who you are and your dedication to what you do. So thank you so much for being here. You are so loved and appreciated, especially amongst this room. So thank you for the work that you do every single day. It is beyond appreciated. I absolutely love teachers. I am a teacher. And so my heart and soul go out to you today for being here. And I hope I can give you some energy because I know you're tired. So hopefully you'll enjoy what we are going to be talking about today. And I hope you will walk away with some ideas and strategies and thoughts of your own and maybe a little bit of inspiration, if anything, by the end of this session. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and kind of kick it off. So we're going to be speaking this evening about assessment. And let me just move this over. Sorry. Why? There it is. Okay. I had a moment. Sorry, everybody. Here we go. Share. Wonderful. So you should see my screen. There, I'm going to put it in present mode. Perfect. Thank you. So it's kind of clumped in for some weird reason, but that's okay. So this evening, we're going to be, this afternoon, we're going to be talking a little bit about rethinking assessment in a tech-infused classroom. And I want to give a very special thanks to Lisa Highfield, Kelly Hilton, and Sarah Landis. I have worked with them for many years, and they are the creators of Hyperdocs. If you've ever heard of Hyperdocs or if maybe heard of their work, they're amazing, and they also are authors of the book, the Hyperdocs Handbook. So some of what I'll be sharing today has actually been shared by them with permission. So I wanted to just point that out. So as Kim mentioned, I am Tanya, and you heard a lot about what some of the things that I've done, but most importantly, I am a teacher. I will always see myself as a teacher first. I see my tenure at Adobe as one that is not forever, and eventually I plan on coming back to the classroom, but I'm just in a different role of teaching for now. But I wanted to kind of step back for a second, and I'm going to actually start this evening with a story. And I want to kind of get your insight. So I'm going to ask...
Tanya, could I interrupt you before you get started with your story? I think people are having trouble seeing the screen, so I think we're going to have to stop you here for a minute. And they're not seeing the screen for some reason in the present mode.
I think maybe I was just in the wrong screen. I'm on the Matrix right now. So I have 3 screens. I think I probably just shared the wrong one. So here, let me...
I think that's right.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is. So here we go. There we go. So this should be a blue screen right here. Does that look right?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And there we go. Do you see it
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. So here we are. So I want to start off with a little story, and I want us to kind of have a look at this particular assessment. Now, you might not necessarily be a teacher who teaches younger students, and if you are not, that is okay. I want you to kind of think about this from a holistic perspective and think about what you might think. So I'm not asking you to be accurate in this case. So I want you to take a moment and have a look at this particular assessment. And I want you to think about how you might assess this particular assessment. And so as you're thinking about the assessment piece, I want you in the chat to share with me what grade level do you think this particular student is in? So if you were to look at this artifact, this demonstration of learning, what, if you were to give a guess, an educated guess, what grade level would you say that you would guess this particular student was in? So I'm going to take a second, and I'm going to let you add that in the chat, and I'm just trying to open up the chat so I can see it. There we go. Wonderful. Okay, so I see first, second, and third grade, first to second. So, some people said for fifth or sixth, second, a lot of second. Okay, so these are great, all great guesses. And I haven't given you much context, of course. So, definitely first from the activity 6 from the top of the paper, interesting. Definitely all really good guesses. So I'll give some more context. So this particular student is actually a 4th grade student. Okay. Now, of course, I haven't given you much grading criteria, and this would be, a very arbitrary guess right now, because you don't know much more about this particular student. But based on our, educated guesses, and the fact that now you understand that this particular student is actually a 4th grade student, I think we can all kind of agree that based on that information and what we kind of know, but based on, developmental stages, where learners are, where they progress, all those different variables, that this particular student definitely is a student that perhaps might be struggling in their writing, right? So we know as we're looking that this particular assessment is giving us some information. So, it might be informing us that this student needs extra help. Maybe we understand that there's some, if you're a literacy specialist, I'm sure you have very particular targeted feedback that you will be able to gather based on this demonstration. But we know based on that assessment that there are things that are definitely like little red flags that we would want to address. Now, here's the thing. What we also want to think about is what might an assessment like this be leaving out? And that's something that I'm always constantly grappling with as a teacher, because as I give assessments and as I'm asking students to demonstrate their learning, I'm always trying to think about who my learners are and where they might have strengths and where their weaknesses might be, but how am I making sure that I am hearing from every learner in my class? And as if we don't do enough in our classes and have enough that is going on. This is one of the difficulties of being a teacher and why we are empathetic humans, and often, why I see us, as teachers are incredibly, are superheroes, because we are constantly trying to reach our learners and trying to figure out, what it is that we can do to help them be the best version of themselves. So I want to kind of step back for a second and share a little bit more about the story of Ophelia. So this particular student, Ophelia, as I mentioned, is a 4th grade student. And my friend, Lisa Heifel, it was not my class, but my friend Lisa Heifel was working with her, with Ophelia and her teacher. Lisa works as a instructional coach in Pleasantville, California, and she was working with this particular class, and she saw the students, demonstration of work, and she was working with her, and she said to Ophelia, wow, as Ophelia was explaining her poem and kind of going over what she was trying to get across, she said, wow, you are a poetic writer, Ophelia. And she asked Ophelia, what do you think? So I want you to take a moment and I want you to listen to what Ophelia said. Oops, let me go back.
I feel hope, some like happiness and like love, because like no one ever said that I was like a really good writer.
So she said, in case you didn't hear it, she says, I feel hope, happiness, and love, because nobody has ever said that I'm a good writer. So I want us to, just to take a moment and think about that. This is a student who is in 4th grade, who is 10 years old. And in her, 4th grade brain, in her mind, in her heart, this is the first time that she has interpreted somebody telling her that she is a good writer. Now, there's something that I have not addressed. So I mentioned that Ophelia is a learner that, as you can see, has been struggling. But what I also didn't mention was that Ophelia is also a learner that has dysgraphia. So, for those of you who are watching now, that might give you a lot more insight in terms of like that demonstration, right? That this is actually a student that, besides the fact that, she has never been told that she's a good writer, she actually has a learning difficulty that prevents her from being able to perhaps demonstrate her writing and her learning in the same way that some of her peers have. Now, that's not to say that Ophelia doesn't have beautiful stories and is not a prolific writer or does not have amazing ideas. But what it tells us is that she has not necessarily been given the time and space and the opportunity to show what she knows in a way where she could ultimately shine. Now, this for me is very personal, as I have a child myself who struggles with writing and with reading as a student with dyslexia. And so I think so many of us can have similar stories where we have children in our classes, or we might have been that child ourselves who are sitting in a room who are often not, who are kind of overlooked or overseen, or might not necessarily been given the opportunity to shine, but there are amazing stories and there's amazing learning that is happening in their minds. And so Ophelia was actually given the opportunity to shine. And I want to show you an alternative assessment and get your thoughts.
I am from by Ophelia. I am from Willie Nelson, the stuffed sheep toy, and from the framed photos of my mom and dad and a heart-shaped painted plate. I am from Living in Kindness and Time to Hit the Hay. I am from the small cherry tree in my veggie garden, whose leaves are beautiful. I am from gardening and sketching and the song Dark Horse. I am from Tia, Drea, and Grandma Sissy, and my brother's chocolate chip cookies and my dad's bacon. I am from all these moments when I visited my family for Christmas, and every moment I've said is what makes me a part of who I am.
I have seen this many times, and I still get emotional when I look at it and when I hear her little voice sharing her poetry, and just imagining what Ophelia feels like when she gets to show what she knows in a way where she can be heard and seen. Right? I love your feedback here. I see that was beautiful. She's still amazing, being appreciative, removing the obstacles in her way, right? Absolutely beautiful. And I know, that for so many of us, we want every of our children to feel the way that Ophelia must feel when she could shine as a learner. And sometimes it's just a matter of just not knowing what you don't know, or just not realizing that there's something that's out there that might be available. And so I'm hoping through today's session, we might be able to provide some strategies for ways that we can really help students like Ophelia be seen and heard. Because ultimately, that's what we want, right? We really want to make sure that every single child in our class is seen, felt, that they feel seen and heard. And that, ultimately that's the best we can do as educators with our students, is that hope. I mean, we might not be perfect, but that our children, that our students feel like they're valued in our classes. So one of the things that often I speak about when I'm doing any kind of work with teachers, and when I'm framing it through the lens of technology integration, is I kind of always come back to the pedagogy, as that's where it always needs to stem from. Like every decision we make in our class when we're working with technology should always be framed through that lens. And I know for so many of you, this has been a crazy journey this year. Not only were you dealing with an insane amount of stress through this pandemic, probably personally, and then on top of that, professionally. But now for so many of you, you were kind of just like thrown out to figure out how you would use technology ultimately to be able to not just deliver your content, but to rethink your content in a way that would be meaningful for your learners to get information, and also so that you could see that they understood what you were teaching. Right? And so much has probably gone, and no kidding, you're exhausted. And so this kind of thinking around pedagogy and technology is something that I've been doing for a while. I implemented my first one-to-one as a teacher when I'm not exaggerating, it was 2007. And so I've been an early adopter with technology and with my students for a very long time. I started coaching at my school district as a coach in 2011. And I implemented my very first one-to-one that year with iPads, the year that they came out. So when I first started, that's how I felt. I was like thrown to the wolves, and I had very little support. And we were trying to figure out what could we do. So over the years, myself and my colleague, Holly Clark, who actually has been teaching in a one-to-one environment even longer than me, she was doing it when it was not even a thing. We have worked together to kind of figure out the best way that we could use technology, and when we noticed that there was the biggest impact with our students. And so what we've discovered over the years is that when technology is being used effectively, there's essentially these three things that start to happen in our classes. One is that they help our students make their thinking visible, which is everything. When a student can press record and be able to articulate their understanding, there is so much deep learning that is happening for that particular student. And there's so many great skills that we're seeing happen for that learner as well. But, like a student like Ophelia, with the ability to add video component with her, with just visuals and her sound, and be able to articulate and show what she knows, just using that little tweak could be absolutely life-changing for our learners. So that press record button, anywhere you have it, if it's Seesaw, if it's Flipgrid, if it's Spark, is insanely powerful for our learners. Taking a picture of something they're working on, if it's a worksheet, and being able to explain deeper and to be able to share that is very powerful. And then when we start to pair that with things like visible thinking routines, I'm a huge fan of Harvard's Project Zero. If you're not familiar, definitely have a look, Google some of their amazing routines. And when you start to pair thinking routines where students can also record themselves and have that as part of your class, there's a lot of deep learning and rich learning that starts to come out as students are thinking about their thinking and making that visible. Second is when students are empowered, and not just empowered in a way that means that we're appeasing the teacher, but when students really and truly are provided with a safe environment to feel like they are seen and heard. You know, so technology is a great equalizer. In the past, in our classes, when we were in brick and mortar, when we would ask a question, it was often the very first 3 students who were maybe, you know, developmentally more mature, or perhaps whose English is their first language, would raise their hands, and those are often the kids that felt confident to do so. And we were often missing so many opportunities to hear from our learners. And now, as we head back post-pandemic to a classroom, you know, let's not forget the power of a back channel, or the power of a shared slide deck for notes, or whatever that might be. Whatever you might use is something that is so powerful for our students to be able to be heard. And then obviously, ultimately, having students have that agency is so powerful as well. So, you know, beyond voice, choice as well, when students are able to articulate using mediums that really they truly feel passionate about and that best express themselves, is so powerful for them. And that's where technology is so powerful. And then ultimately, it allows students to share their work. And I'm not just talking about sharing it with you in Google Classroom, or in, you know, ultimately you'll have Canvas or whatever that might look like. I'm talking about students being able to share their work with each other, be able to publish their work, and be able to learn how to give critical feedback and receive feedback. It's a skill that can be taught and should be taught, because in the real world, students are going to have to learn how to be receptive to feedback from not just their teachers, but from the world and from their peers. And they're doing this ultimately now on social media, but making that part of a classroom practice is incredibly powerful. And so these are things that we noticed that were incredibly powerful for our learners, and were really helpful when it came to actually ultimately helping them learn more effectively. So one of the things that I think is really powerful with a learner like Ophelia was the fact that she was really engaged in this really powerful type of a pathway to a multidimensional assessment. And, you know, when we look at how equitable our assessments are, you know, we want to really think about a student like Ophelia, you know, thinking about what skills that they might have, or if our data is asking the right questions, or are we only asking for application through writing and multiple choice, right? Because ultimately writing is really, you know, one-dimensional, and when you add your voice there, there's another layer of understanding that is present. And when students then are able to also add in music and voiceover, they're really able to reveal a much deeper understanding. And so, if, you know, what if we asked students, what else do you know that I didn't ask, right? Like, you know, having students be able to have that expression, and then be able to also ultimately share what they might not have been able to share because that opportunity was not there, I think is incredibly powerful. So one of the things that I think is really, you know, and I'm obviously shortening a much longer session because of limited time, but I want to kind of leave you with some ideas of things that you might consider to do as you're planning and thinking about your learning and your learning objectives, and your planning for perhaps, you know, next week, next month, or next year. You know, as we know, we are always starting with our essential standards, our anchor standards, and we might want to ask ourselves, like, what can I ask students to do that will give them the opportunity to apply multiple standards? And think about, you know, the outcome, and consider the many layers of learning objectives that might be demonstrated in a single product, right? So we're always starting with that end in mind, but how are we interpreting that and providing the students with an opportunity to show what they know through the lens of creativity, right? So, you know, these are often things that we might consider as we're thinking about our lesson design, right? And meeting those targets. Ultimately, we really want to be setting a purpose for creating. And if you're not familiar with Hyperdocs, they're a great strategy. It's a great tool that really helps you kind of position the way that you're structuring the experience of your learner, and scaffolding the skills that you might need to be thinking about in order to, in order to, you know, reach your learners where they are. And so if you've never seen a Hyperdoc, this is an example of one. You know, it often will take on the engage, explore, explain, apply, and extend model, which is one that's, you know, very widely used, but it really factors in process and product of the assessment. So you're able to really design with intention for the outcome. So taking Ophelia's example as an example that could be scaffolded, having a student like Ophelia be able to explore all other examples of student writing, have her be able to explore other examples of media, you know, strategies to show what she knows in a more effective way, being able to effectively scaffold the skills that would go in to her improvement of her product are possible. And when we structure our lessons this way, we're able to scaffold all the skills that we would want to teach and package them so that the learner can ultimately work at their own pace. And allows us also to see the process unfold and provide feedback throughout the learning journey. So this is an example of that. And then ultimately, you know, we want to be thinking about ways that we can really offer choice for our learners so that they can have the opportunity to show what they know. And, you know, so we want to be thinking about who those learners are. I'm just showing you an example through Creative Cloud. You know, I work at Adobe, but there's a bajillion tools out there that, you know, that our students have access to. You know, maybe they're going to show what they know using Flipgrid. Maybe they're going to show what they know by creating a web page using Spark Page, or a Spark video, or a Spark post, right? But ultimately, we want to think about the best tool that fits their needs, that fits their learning, that ultimately will help their work shine. You know, it's not necessarily about the tool, but some tools will give more opportunity for our learners to demonstrate their learning through multiple dimensions. So thinking about that is really powerful, and choosing the right tool that ultimately will help that particular learner show what they know in the most meaningful way to them. So a few examples of some of my students' demonstrations of learning that I wanted to kind of share. You know, you saw Ophelia as an example. I've had students create, you know, videos at the beginning of the semester, you know, as their digital citizenship pledges. I've used Spark Post as a tool for students to pair with visible thinking routines. This is one in particular as like a 6-word summary, so that I could check for understanding as they're working through reading assignments. And, you know, pairing text and visuals is incredibly powerful. Having students create, this is an example of a student of mine who created a poetry anthology using Spark Page to publish her writing. So these are some examples of ways that students can really demonstrate their learning and that they can be used not only for summative assessments or assessment of learning, but also be used as a way to check for understanding and assessment for learning, so that we can really check for process as well. These are a few other examples. I've had students create public service announcements, video book reports. I think this is incredibly powerful when we're asking kids very often to show comprehension of reading, and we do a traditional book report. Now it's so easy to Google that and just copy and paste that. But when you're asking students to pair visuals and writing
by
with
J.K. Rowling.
icons,
Harry can't wait to get back to Hogwarts.
you can't.
But when a strange creature.
You really have to understand what you're writing to scaffold that into this kind of workflow. So, this is really higher order thinking that we're asking our students to do, but we're able to gain better understanding from that because they're showing what they know in a really creative alternative way. And then ultimately having students really thinking about how they demonstrate growth over time. And obviously I don't have a lot of time to kind of go into portfolios, but I am a huge advocate for providing students with the opportunities to show what they know and show and be able to demonstrate growth over time. And that is really great. What tends to happen is as students are starting to demonstrate their learning and they're creating content, they can ultimately pull together those demonstrations and be able to create reflective portfolios and really be able to show what they know over time. And I think that is the most powerful example of student understanding when they are able to articulate that growth. And so this is an example from one of my students who created a portfolio of her growth.
That I have an old soul and a creative mind. That I was born athletic and academic. But they don't see me practicing, studying, drawing. They don't see my sketchbooks. But I wouldn't be here without my friends, my team, or my family. Because we all start somewhere.
This is such a great example, when a student can kind of get to a point where they are able to demonstrate and articulate their learning and their growth as learners. I see some great questions in the chat where I totally agree. Having students, designing those packaged lessons like in Hyperdocs is absolutely not something that you might do for every lesson. That's definitely something that is great to work on as a team or with your curriculum and instruction team. There's no question. But it's definitely something that's interesting to kind of look at. And there are a lot of available templates online that are available for free. If you go to hyperdocs.co, there's a place called Teachers Give Teachers, as opposed to Teachers Pay Teachers. And it's a community that I highly recommend you check out if you have not already, because this is a whole movement of teachers that really are engaged in sharing and ultimately, helping their learners and all learners be able to show what they know in really meaningful and powerful ways. And I want to kind of step back also and just a few things to think about, like leveraging the power of our peers, going back to having students sharing their work is, again, so incredibly powerful. And then ultimately providing that kind of that classroom culture that is really, really focused on continuous growth. I love this quote. What else? From the teacher Alicia Johal, and she said, "I got into the habit of making sure the last question of every assessment is, what else do you know that I didn't ask you?" the responses varied, but I love it as another way for students to communicate their comprehension. And I think that just that question alone, forget the technology, forget anything else. If you take away the habit of asking students, what else do you know that I didn't ask you? I think would be incredibly powerful. You know, and then, you know, providing that climate in our class where the students feel really secure to take courageous risks and to ask questions and come back and learn that assessment is not about the grade, but really about the growth. So I hope that, you know, as we kind of reflect on our practice, and I know that's a lot of what we're doing through these courses, that, you know, we always kind of come back to our why. And, you know, I always kind of go back, and Ophelia is such a significant part of my journey as an educator, because when we think about Ophelia, what we learned from Ophelia is that ultimately our students will do what we ask of them, right? And so we want to make sure that we're always thinking about, you know, what will we ask of them, right? And so that really is up to us. So thank you guys so much. I hope that I leave you with some ideas, some questions, some thoughts, maybe some inspiration. I don't want to leave you with more work. I don't want to leave you with more stress. I want to send you all my love and all my appreciation today. So thank you so much.